To call to order the December 5th Heritage Preservation Commission meeting of Chaska. Liz, would you like to take care of the roll call?
Second that. Commissioner Bonin, Davies, Coleman, Place,
Here.
Bristius,
Here.
Welbert,
Here.
and Vice Chair Mueller.
Here. That moves us on to item number 3, adopting the agenda. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda?
Yes.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
Make a motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That moves us on to number 4, the visitor presentation. There isn't anyone in the audience. Or is there someone on Zoom? No.
Anyone online?
We can move on in the agenda to number 5. And that's the minutes from our June meeting, way back in June. Has everyone had a chance to look at those?
Yes.
They looked all right.
Yep.
Would someone like to make a motion? To approve?
All motion. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Moves us on to item number 6. Consent items, I don't believe there are any, right? Moving on to 7 action items, there are none. Moving on to 8 discussion items, there would be none. So we get to number 9. And that's going to be our 2023 year in review. Liz, will you present that?
I'm going to do a quick recap of last year. I believe that we are already in December, moving on to a new year. And I always like to do a recap of what we've reviewed, gone over for this last year, just to get the nice feeling of, we're doing good work here in the community and we're working on projects that are unique and fun and beneficial for the city of Chaska. So we're going to go over what we looked at in 2023, which dates all the way back to January. We looked at a couple different things, one of them being the Highway 41 improvements, and then the second being the downtown Chaska business rear entrance design guidelines. The following month, we did get a site alteration permit in for Chaska Yards, which is located at 211 and 217 Walnut Street. And then a couple months later, we came back in June and reviewed another site alteration permit for 210 Chestnut Street in downtown. And we also looked at the updates on the heritage columns, specifically for 2nd Street in downtown. And then we also did a very brief walking tour in October for a work session, just to see some of the progress that was being made on some of the things that we reviewed earlier this year. So kicking off with the Highway 41 improvements, this project obviously included the reconstruction of Highway 41 through downtown Chaska up to Chaska Boulevard and flanked on the south by the Minnesota River. The improvements for this roadway kicked off in summer of this year and wrapped up in middle of November. So now road is open. You can see an image of the ribbon cutting that happened in November, which was very exciting. I know the businesses in downtown were very excited to see the road open and be another main source of travel through the city. Some of the major improvements that happened with the reconstruction had to do a lot with upgrading the utilities under the roadway, upgrading the pavement, eliminating the parking on the business side of things so that it could be a through lane highway. So at this point, it's a 3-section or a 3-lane highway with through lanes and dedicated turn lanes onto the streets into the local street system of Chaska. Other details included some of the downtown streetscape elements, so updates to both the kind of metal poles that you see throughout and brick elements through the city to also be kind of those decorative elements, but also heritage elements that we'll discuss a little bit further in some of the reviews that we've done. So a lot of big updates and efficiency has been a result of the work that's being done on Highway 41. Some work that's still in progress and is slated to be completed next year is the underpass between the Chaska building and the Chaska Depot. So on the north side of Highway 41, as you're exiting downtown, that is still being under construction and has made a lot of headway in the last few months to show that pass through there. That's going to be a huge benefit for pedestrian connection through downtown. In addition to that, the paseos that are planned on the north and south sides of City Square Park are also planned for next year in conjunction with the highway improvement plan. And that again will also bolster some of the pedestrian movements and connections that are happening mid-block and connecting into the sidewalk system. So this will give people a reprieve or another option away from the highway to connect into downtown. In addition, there's additional public parking being added to some of these paseo areas and on the north side of 5th Street and east of Highway 41. So those are changes that were in response to the parking that was taken off of Highway 41 directly in front of those businesses, which were changed into bigger buffer areas and landscape areas for the boulevards there. And the landscaping will also be done next year as well. So if you notice when you go into downtown, a lot of the planting beds are tarped off and have rocks over them, but those will ultimately be areas for additional landscaping to occur. The second thing that we looked at in the same month was the downtown Chaska business rear entrance design guidelines. And this is also kind of in response to some of the work that happened with the Highway 41 improvements. With some of the parking being relocated off Highway 41 and oriented to the rear of some of the businesses, there was kind of this need to understand how the backs of these buildings would be utilized in response to the changes in pedestrian traffic into their sites. So the city consulted with HKGI to put together a set of design guidelines that businesses can use as a resource to understand some of the improvements that they can work on for the backs of their businesses and help enhance them and make them more of a primary pedestrian entrance. So some of the things that were looked at and discussed in that is the treatment of doors and windows, exterior materials, awnings and canopies, the lighting, signage and wayfinding, plants and planters, and private outdoor spaces. So you guys provided a lot of good commentary towards those design guidelines that have now been implemented into that document and is available for businesses to use if they want to seek enhancements to the backs of their businesses. We also updated our financial incentives that we offer for downtown businesses. So we have a storefront loan program and the sign and awning grant available to properties in downtown. So the storefront loan program and signage and awning grant will also capture eligibility for people who want to enhance their rear entrances too. The next thing we worked on was a site alteration permit for the project known as Chaska Yards, also located on Walnut Street at 211 and 217 Walnut Street. So this was the project proposed by Carver County CDA, which proposed the rehabilitation of the Ernst home, which currently sits on the site today, and then the rest of the site is vacant. And then in addition to that, they were proposing the 3 owner-occupied units that would be targeted at more of an affordable income price point, so 80% AMI or 80% area median income, to allow for another type of owner-occupied option for people in downtown Chaska. So you saw this a couple times, I think earlier or later in 2022, but you formally approved a site alteration permit in 2023 to include that project and restoring the Ernst home and adding those 3 buildings. So they are still making progress towards implementing that project. Lots of details to still figure out with both the city and with SHPO, but they're hopeful that they have a start time of spring, summer next year is what they're stating at this point. The other project that came in for a site alteration permit is 210 Chestnut Street, or the Myers building, which is along Highway 41 here. You can even see some of the highway improvements in this progress image on the right here. But the site alteration permit was to restore the storefront on this building. I don't have the before image, but this is the building that had stucco on the front of it, basically under kind of that cornice cap here all the way down. And they were successful in removing the stucco earlier this year, which is probably the first case that we've had that's been successful to remove stucco from one of these Chaska brick buildings. So that's great for us and gives us precedence to point to if, you know, other business owners or property owners that have a Chaska brick building that has stucco on it, you know, we have some resources we can work off of to hopefully make it another successful endeavor on other projects. But the image on the right shows where the building's at right now. As of a week ago, the improvements that they're making on the building is enhancing the first floor storefront to be larger glass storefront, which would be in line with kind of the original character of the building, and bringing it back to more of an original structure. So this one is very exciting, and I love to see the progress happening on this one. So you guys should be very proud of the work that you've done in conjunction with that project. And lastly, the heritage columns. So again, we looked at this in June of this year and then kind of subsequently went out in October, just to see the progress and kind of the tangible view of it in real life, as we refined and finalized some design templates to use that will hopefully implement on other streets as we continue to gather more imagery for these other columns. But the one we focused on and the one that you have seen thus far is for 2nd Street. There's a heritage wall and several columns both on the east and west sides of Highway 41. And you provide some commentary towards the designs that are picked out and some of the imagery being used for each of those plaques that are slated in those walls and columns. We're hoping, again, this is kind of a project that's ongoing with the improvements that are happening on Highway 41, but hoping that with 2nd Street, we can implement that as soon as next year in the warmer months when we have the material and all the images and even the QR codes for online set up and ready to go. So that one is a very exciting project, and I'm sure we'll be bringing back more images as we move north into downtown on some of the other columns and heritage walls. So more to come on that one. And then lastly, I just want to wrap up this kind of meeting and overall year, just looking ahead to next year. You know, we didn't really look at our goals until the last time we looked at our goals was in 2020. So seeing if there's opportunity to add or enhance or change any of the goals that we kind of laid out during that time, and working on for the year of 2024. I will admit that some of these things probably got pushed off longer than they needed to be. And now there's, I think, much more availability to make these a reality just with the staff that we've been able to add within this year. It's very exciting and promising for us to focus on these goals a little bit more in depth that we've wanted to do since establishing them. So I just wanted to lay out the goals from when we last visited, putting together goals and whether or not we want to add or enhance anything to these. And I'm not expecting that we'll figure that out tonight. I would like to revisit this early in 2024 for us to either do a work session or a meeting and put these down on paper again for us to use and prioritize what we want to work on for the next year. So some of the things that we mentioned and I think still hold true to some extent for our goals is updating our Walnut Street National District with SHPO. That was done, or that designation was done back in the late 70s, early 80s. So there's opportunity to update that. There's been a couple moves with buildings being torn down and the Ernst home moving over there that needs to be reflected in the new designation. Plus the information that was provided and looked at the time of designation is very brief. It's not to the extent that they normally do surveys of historic districts. So I think it would also put us in good standing with SHPO with that district. The second one, which we've done some walking tours for, is looking at the local designation list and seeing if more properties can be added. So revisiting that again and really honing in on the properties that we have kind of pinned or highlighted in other walking tours that we've done. And then this one still holds true, I think, being engaged and involved with the City Square West project. So we probably don't have a very specific timeline as to when this is going to occur. It's all dependent on receiving the remaining funding that we need from legislation. We did get a big chunk of money within the last year to put towards that project, but it wasn't enough to start the project and fully fund the project. So we're still waiting on potential of getting more funding for that from the legislation. And the next year will be telling of whether or not that will move forward or if we have to wait a little bit longer. And then the last one, revisiting historical documents for potential updates, such as our historic context study. Seeing if there's a way to look at that every 5 to 10 years to make updates where needed. And I think that one also can pretty much go hand in hand with number one, just in terms of the updated information that we're trying to get out of that. I'm open to any comments or questions that you have right now regarding this. Otherwise, I think the timeline and looking at this in more depth is slated for early next year at one of our meetings or doing a work session. So, yeah.
First opportunity to see these for me, so I appreciate it. Sounds like 2 and 3 are fairly passive in the work required, but as far as 1 and 4 are concerned, what's the work required, Liz, and what was our accomplishment level of those?
Yeah, 1 and 4, you know, I think there might be some grant opportunities that we might be able to take advantage of to help us with those, and hiring a consultant and doing some of that preliminary work for us, or even the entire work. So I think if we are, you know, able to get a consultant on board with that, you know, not having gone through those processes directly within my time here, I'm not entirely sure kind of how long it takes to get those implemented necessarily, but with the Walnut Street Historic District, you know, we've got a number of properties in there. So it could take months just to get all of that information put together and updated, just dependent on how much is available out there.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is when you guys, because this is the first time I'm seeing it too, I think I might have started like right after, maybe.
I think so. Yep.
How did we, like, do you bring kind of the list and we talk about it, or are we bringing ideas? How does that work, creating goals?
For the designation list?
No,
Or-
in general, like the process of creating goals.
Yeah, I think where it started in 2020 is there were 2 that I know came from previous years that I put on there, but and I think that was the local designation list and the Walnut Street National District. And then the other 2, 3 and 4, I think were added by the HPC back in 2020 when we discussed it. So any of these, or if you have other ideas or whatever, you know, this is an open discussion and room to talk about that and figure out if that's something you want to add.
Okay.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Columns, what did they end up using for the photographic material on the columns? What is the material that the photograph is on?
You know, I think we're still finalizing that. We haven't seen the mock-ups of the different material samples because they have a few that they could use, but you know, we're obviously going to go with something that is weather resistant and not prone to damages. But we have yet to see kind of the specific material that we end up doing with that. I think our goal was to finalize all of the images for 2nd Street and getting the QR codes all set up. so that we can figure out what material we need to do with that.
Yeah, definitely a challenge in Minnesota.
Yep, it is. I know that, so HKGI, they're also helping us with putting these designs together, and they've done these in several different communities. I know they've got a couple different options for us to pick from that they're confident will withstand the weather conditions that we experience here, so.
Should that project be mentioned in the goals too, as part of the effort to complete it?
Actually, I think that's a great one.
Because there's a lot of work involved.
Yep.
I've seen
Yep.
it from the Historical Society side.
I mean, you directly know how much work goes into that, and
Very difficult to find the photographs you want to see for the various parts of different blocks,
right,
just not there.
right. Yeah, it's a lot of compilation, but also compiling the exact information with each image. And so it's a lot of work, and without the Historical Society, we would not be anywhere on this project. So.
Yeah, what really makes them valuable is the history that you can pull up.
Yep.
That's what really makes it interesting.
Right. And I think, so I'm working with Kevin Wright, who's our communications manager on this, and he's done kind of a draft layout of one of the images. So how you can go to a part of our website and see additional history and information on that image itself. And it's pretty cool what he can put together just from a graphic standpoint, but also some of the information from some of the Chaska books that have been put together, and bringing all of that information that's relevant to that image is really interesting. We even have some old stuff from Tracy Swanson doing some voiceovers on some historical images, and we want to tap into that and bring that in where we can. So.
Yeah, there's some great stories. It's all about people.
Yep. Yep. They're actually very entertaining stories too. So.
It should be.
Yes, they
She's
should.
got to be fun too.
Yep.
Is there any other comments on goals or any other?
Nothing other
Business.
than like, I like the idea of revisiting it in the new year.
Perfect. Yep, I want to give you guys an opportunity to think about it so that we can come back to it, and if we want to add anything else or figure out what we want to prioritize on the list. I think that'll be a good target for us to hit early next year and get that put
Of
together.
curiosity, will all the committees be going through a similar process? The other committees that,
Are they gonna
like, do they go through a goal setting process, and can we get?
do?
Is-
I'm not as privy to if they actually put together a specific goal list. Like with Planning Commission, we don't necessarily do that since our work is pretty consistent in terms of reviewing applications as they're coming in. So above and beyond that is kind of tied into some of the applications that we review, and if there's, you know, ordinance changes that we want to focus on, but we haven't really put any goals down on paper. So I think one of the benefits of this commission is we get to do a lot of proactive work compared to, you know, Planning Commission and City Council, and even the Parks and Recreation Commission. So there's a lot of opportunity there to be creative and figure out things that we find really important that we want to focus on. Mm-hmm.
You talked about number 3. What does it take to get the City Square West project going? You talked about government grants, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So
That grants for the purpose of acquiring land or relocating businesses.
Yeah, I mean, the funding would essentially help pay for the project, help pay for, you know, putting together the plans to define the actual project and what the buildings are going to be and that sort of thing, but also looking at, the relocation side of it in terms of the businesses that currently occupy that site. So the funding would kind of encompass all of that. And
So it does include design and planning still. You really don't have a final plan.
no, we've done some preliminary work, just to, start to paint a picture of, the type of development that we're hoping to see and trying to attract the right developer. But we really need that other remaining funding to kind of help with all the other things that are a part of the project, which is working with the businesses and offering relocation benefits for people who are still there, and making sure that they're set up appropriately when the time comes for us to start on the project. So
Did the library relocation get taken care of? Or?
I think, I'm trying to think if that's attached to the City Square project or in the funding, and I'm not quite sure on that, but one of the things that will need to happen, and it's a part of our overall building facilities improvement priority that we have going on right now, is making sure we can find, well, I think we have a location defined for the library, which is across the street from City Hall, basically in the DMV half block, looking at that. But the timing of that happening, it probably won't be until after we complete the municipal services building. So right now we're working on the fire station and the police department building on Engler Boulevard. The second building that we'll be working on is the municipal services building. And then third, we'll be looking at the relocation of the library, which then would open up space within City Hall. And then fourth, we would work on updating City Hall to kind of absorb into the spaces that were used by both the police and the library once the library moves out. So it's kind of a chronological order that we're going in based on using, the tax levy to kind of supplement and pay for those projects in the years to come.
But does that have an exact schedule or not as far as years?
So with the police and fire station, construction will begin next year, next spring and summer. And then the municipal services building, I think what has been stated now, our goal was to start that development process next year, but it might be a year out from that. So a 2025 development process and a 2026 date. That's all kind of in flux right now. So with that being 2026, we could expect to see maybe the library happening in 2027. And then City Hall would be 2028. It's kind of the layout right now. And that all can change again, just based on how far we get with kind of these primary projects and the funding that we're able to supplement those projects with. So, yeah.
Planning department is very busy.
Yes. Yes, we have been very busy, and luckily we just added a city planner 2 months ago, which has been great. And I look at it as a benefit of being able to provide more focus and attention on some of the work that we're doing here on the HPC. So all good.
Any other comments? If not, I guess all we need is a motion to adjourn.
Should.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thanks for the update, Liz.
That's good.
Absolutely.